It is 6 p.m. Monday, June 2nd. I will now call to order this regular meeting of the Winooski City Council, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll move on to agenda review. Does any member of council have any questions or concerns with tonight's agenda?
No. I was wondering if maybe this would come up with the consent agenda, but consent agenda item A looks like it's a discussion approval item and maybe should be part of our regular items.
Was that the Hoods Crossing? So yeah, very briefly, when we were updating earlier with the presentation on the website, I had the same thing happen earlier. It showed up in the consent agenda, but was amended quickly after. So it was warned correctly all weekend. It was just a short window of time this afternoon when Paul had updated that presentation. So the most current version on the website, if you refresh, should be good to go.
Awesome. I will do that.
Yeah, our timing was similar then because we both looked at the same way.
Good call, though. Anything else?
No.
All right. So then we'll move on to public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the public to make comment on any topic that is not included in tonight's agenda. If you're here for something that is included on the agenda, we just ask that you wait until we reach that item for your comment to be made. Anybody in the room have public comment? No?
We haven't passed.
Well,
Just point
it's
of order. We voted on the consent agenda in the past.
We do, but we're not there yet.
Okay.
That's after public comment.
Got it. I was thrown off. By
No, I'm not usually the one doing all the talking, so it makes sense. Let's see. It looks like we have one hand up in the Zoom. Paul, would you be able to bring them over?
Hi, Terry. Go ahead when you're ready.
Hi there. Hi, everybody. My name is Terry Zigmund. I live on West Street, and I'm just checking in again. I know there was some discussion, some public comment a month or so ago about the truck traffic and the truck route on trucks using Elm Street and Pine Street and West Street. And I'm here to just kind of follow up on that. I was wondering if anyone had an opportunity to find out about what the weight limits are, the height limits, the width limits, and the length limits for trucks on West Street. And the reason I'm asking is because some of you may know that during the winter, a truck went by and almost took out the telephone pole at the corner of Elm and West. The tire tracks were in the snow and they were less than 6 inches away from the telephone pole. The stop sign was taken down, was taken out by the truck. No one seemed to notify anybody about that. A couple days later, after I noticed it was down, I actually reached out to John Rauscher and let him know, and they fixed it promptly. And the solution to that problem seems to be to put a big cement barrier at the corner there. And so I'm just curious, it just seems like these trucks can't get around that corner. They're up on one sidewalk or the other every time that they make those turns. And so I'm curious about any sort of limits in terms of weight, length, height, that sort of thing. They also did take down someone's cable to their house over the winter, again, not stopping, not letting anybody know, just kept going. And they're also traveling on West Street using what seems to be excessive speeds. I believe the speed limit citywide is 25 miles an hour, and looks like they're going faster than that. Many of them don't stop at the stop sign. So I'm just here to find out what, if anything, can be done about this.
Thank you for that commentary. We've got some staff in the room, so I'll see if any of them have some comments for you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for reaching out, Terry. So as you can see, I am not Elaine, so I'm filling in here for her. I'm not sure if there's been follow-up, but I can certainly look into the weight and height limits with our team here and report back to you. I don't know that right off the top of my head. It's not my normal area. And certainly can check in with our code enforcement team as well, and see if they've had any issue there with it recently. But yeah, I'm happy to follow up with you after I have some conversations with the team here.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you.
Are there any other members of the public that would like to make public comment at this moment? Paul, I see another hand.
Hi,
Go ahead. Hi, Diane. Go ahead when you're ready.
thank you. Hi, I was just checking in to see if there are any plans to do any improvements to either the Gilbrook area or the Cassavant Trail system.
Yeah. That is my area, so I can field that. So we do have some trail days that we're working to get scheduled in the next couple weeks here. As the weather gets a little bit warmer and some of our spring just registration and hiring stuff settles down a little bit in community services. So I'd say keep an eye on the Winooski Recreation and Parks social channels if you're there. And it will likely also be on the city's website as well. So we do have plans to do trail days in Memorial Park, Cassavant, and Gilbrook, both kind of start of season, mid-season, and end of season. So those dates will be coming out pretty soon.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And any general plans to update any other facilities at Gilbrook? I know there's lots of fencing that's pretty dilapidated. I just think it's such a important part of our community, and I didn't know if there was any idea if there could be any updating to the entrance or sort of the fencing along the Colchester side.
Yeah, so the fencing along the Colchester side is not ours. That belongs to the neighboring property. So certainly something we could follow up with them about though and see.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Is there any other public comment? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. So in today's consent agenda, we have City Council minutes from May 19th, account payable warrant from May 29th, accounts payable warrant from May 11th through May 24th, a resolution recognizing June as Pride Month, a resolution recognizing Immigrant Heritage Month and World Refugee Day, an event permit for downtown Winooski block parties, an event permit for downtown Winooski Juneteenth celebration, an event permit for Pride in Winooski, and an event permit for the neighborhood block party on North Street, as well as the Chittenden Solid Waste District fiscal year 2025 to 2026 budget presentation, and finally the State Treasurer's Report, Internal Finance Controls Checklist. Any concerns with the consent agenda today?
Nope.
No. In that case, I will seek a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Bren, second by Aurora. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, and now we are on to council reports. Charlie, would you like to start?
Yeah, I unfortunately had to miss our housing commission meeting last week. But Jasmine will be with us later to discuss some updates. And that's all I have.
Yeah. My folks have not met since we last met, so I don't have anything to discuss.
The Infrastructure Commission hasn't met since our last meeting, and our June meeting will need to move to a different date since it falls this month on Juneteenth, on June 19th. So we'll need to coordinate what alternates might be available, but the 2 other days that week that I was going to suggest are already have other scheduling conflicts as well. So it's going to be a packed month. So I'll let you know when it gets rescheduled.
I'm good. I have a very brief update from Inclusion and Belonging, and that is also was going to fall on June 19th. We've moved the meeting to June 12th. So that'll be at 6 p.m. via Zoom. We're still finalizing the agenda for that. But some of the items include discussing the Inclusion and Belonging Commission having their future event. So they'll give some updates on that and the subcommittee working on it.
Awesome. All right, Ray, city updates?
Yeah, so a few of these on behalf of Elaine and others and staff, but excited to report that the Mosaic raffle, receipt raffle for Main Street is going really well. Had over 50 submissions for the month of May, and the winner for that month will be announced very soon. I want to encourage people to keep patronizing those businesses and bringing those receipts down to be entered in the raffle, and I'm really pleased to see the support for those businesses in response to this campaign. So also encourage people, if you haven't already, follow Downtown Winooski and the city on social, and Downtown Winooski VT or downtownwinooski.org/mosaic has more information about this campaign as well. I'm excited personally, but Myers Pool opens this Sunday. It's hard to believe after yesterday the pool is opening this week, but definitely still encourage people to get season passes if you haven't. I will say pass sales have been a little slow, but the weather has not helped our cause. I don't think anyone is thinking about swimming right now. But also encourage people to go visit winooskibt.gov/pool for the full schedule and all the program offerings that are happening at the pool this summer. And a reminder that we do offer swim lessons free for all Winooski residents. So that's something we've stayed committed to through the years, and it's been really great. So yeah, hope to see a lot of people in the pool after Sunday. Reminder as well, boards, commissions, and committees have a number of seats expiring at the end of this month. If you have an interest in participating on a committee or a commission, really encourage you to consider applying. There's no previous experience required. We really do want to have a broad set of voices around the table, and that helps us do a better job as city staff to make our decisions in a way that reflects what the community is interested in. So please do check that out. It's going to be continuing to be out on our news updates and on the city's website. But again, pretty much across the board, our committees have openings. So want to encourage people to apply. This one I'm going to read verbatim, but the change of appraisal notices were mailed to property owners in Winooski who have completed permitted work or improvements that increase the value of their property. As part of this process, the city of Winooski is required to host a grievance meeting for property owners who want to appeal their change of appraisal. To learn more and get started, visit the news update section on our website at winooskibt.gov or call, email, or stop by the clerk's office for assistance with that process. Friendly reminder, and many thanks to Paul for putting this out via social, but annual reminder that Winooski does have a leash law for our canine friends. I will say, as a person who manages parks, we see this a lot of off-leash dogs in those areas. Our one off-leash area is West Allen Park. That is the one designated space in the city where doggos can be off-leash, but the rest of the city really do need to keep those dogs leashed, even if your dog is fabulous. Not everybody's is, so please do. And then just a reminder that Thrive Summer Camp is still enrolling. Actually, was at the farmers market yesterday and had a number of families sign up, which was great. So it is not too late. We've got some spaces left and would love to have your kindergarten through 5th grade student join us for a really fun summer. And our new Thrive program director, Evelyn, started in person today.
Oh, nice.
So very excited to have that change underway. So
Awesome.
yeah, so that's what we got from the city side.
Lots of good stuff there between the two reports. So I do just want to check in, see if there's any comment from anybody in the public. All right, so let's move on to regular items. Move on to item A, which is up for discussion approval, Hoods Crossing traffic signal and sidewalk extension overview. John is already on his way up.
I'll do a quick intro and then I'll scoot to the side for Steve and Mike. So this is just a sort of informational overview of the Hoods Crossing project that we've talked about the policy priorities strategies meeting. It really initiated through the East Allen scoping study that we did a few years back. This was signalizing, intersection was chosen as the selected alternative. So I'm going to let Steve Spear from HNTB, he's project manager for that, go through a presentation. We also have Mike LaCroix from VTrans, the project manager from V-Trans, and then Ryan Lambert's also here from our side. So one thing I do really want to highlight is this is a pretty huge opportunity for the city. So this was, the plan was that we were going to try to fund this project through normal city capital funding somehow. It's going to end up being, just for the signal, about $3 to $3.5 million, which massive project for us to try to take on financially. So ultimately, it's want to thank V-Trans for kind of piggybacking this project with the bridge project, which you'll hear about shortly. But right now, it's 100% federally funded, no city funds for the traffic signal itself. So major savings to the city to get this work done. So really appreciate the work V-Trans has done on this so far. So with that, I will kick it over to okay, Mike will come up and I'll shift aside.
Thanks, Ron.
Thanks, John. All right, so jumping in here, John gave a good introduction of what we're here for, but to be talking about East Allen Street, East Spring Street intersection signalization. Just quick introductions. Again, myself, I'm Steve Spear. I'm the consultant project manager with HNTB. Got Mike LaCroix here, V-Trans project manager. And really what we're looking to talk about today is just a bit of a background on the project, kind of where we stand to date and kind of what we have upcoming, schedule, next steps. We'll read all these verbatim because we'll go through them here in a moment. But so, I'm sure familiar to all of you, but the obligatory project location slide. Got our intersection of East Allen Street, East Spring Street, and Hood Street, kind of right about in the center on Vermont 15, East Allen Street, between the circulator and the exit 15 ramps. So taking a look at the existing conditions here, obviously this is a major roadway through here, Vermont 15's principal arterial on East Allen Street, a major collector for East Spring Street. We're talking traffic, average annual daily traffic around 18,000 for East Allen Street and 5,500 for East Spring. So certainly, there's a lot of users of this intersection. Currently, of course, it's an unsignalized intersection with a stop controlled side street from East Spring, and then has the at-grade rail crossing with the New England Central Railroad. Now, highlighting, some of the specifics of the existing intersection. Certainly, there's that kind of existing raised island there, which we've learned recently while doing some borings and test pits is makes it a challenge to move traffic around through there. So something to know. Kind of on that eastbound approach, we've got the single through lane only, no left turns onto East Spring Street. Kind of highlighting here, obviously the skew of the railroad crossing is something that we have to take into account on our end. And then, pointing out there's fairly limited rail signal devices out there from a how clear it is that there's a rail crossing standpoint. You just have that overhead structure and then just the flashers over here. Noting there's only that single pedestrian crossing that's there now. Certainly it's unsignalized, unprotected. Then on your westbound approach, you have your right turn lane and your through lane. And then of course we have the condition where if you're turning left from East Spring Street and trying to go east, you're kind of only having to deal with one stream of traffic. You're merging into the flow up here. So kind of just, another slide to highlight that is a somewhat unusual condition of the existing intersection that we're looking to address, where you're it's almost like a highway merge where you're, accelerating uphill, trying to get into the flow of traffic. So, it's something that, factored into the recommendations as part of this project. So to give a little bit of history and background, John touched on it certainly, but, this was originally studied as part of the East Allen Street Gateway Enhancement Scoping Study. The intersection was evaluated as part of that larger corridor study, looking at East Allen Street from the circulator all the way through the exit 15 ramp intersections. Within that, there were some short and long-term improvements, but, the East Allen, East Spring Street intersection was studied specifically as part of that, and a range of alternatives were looked at. Coming out of that, a preferred alternative was recommended, and that was the signalized intersection that we're, here to talk about today, and that's obviously installing traffic signals, and then it has a number of bike and pedestrian kind of overall safety and mobility improvements, and kind of revises the lane arrangements to and from the intersection. Project history continued here, and kind of where the Burlington Winooski Bridge project comes into this. That graphic on the right there is from a detour study, for the bridge, and when we were looking at, options of what happens when you close lanes on the bridge or partial detour, full detour, this intersection was identified as certainly a major intersection along the way, and one that would potentially have some challenges in its current configuration with the, increased traffic that was expected. So the initial recommendation coming out of that study was to actually install temporary signals at East Allen, East Spring Street. And then, got to discussing, it's like, well, let's not put temporary infrastructure out there when there's already been a study commenced. What can we do to, make this a permanent condition? So, at that point, there was some kind of certainly discussion, coordination between V-Trans, the city, RBC, and ultimately this project was kind of advanced as a standalone intersection project from that broader corridor study. So this was kind of pulled forward multiple years in the program to get this out there ahead of the bridge project. So kind of jumping from there to kind of where we stand today. What you're looking at is kind of a conceptual layout. So we have submitted conceptual plans, and then we're continuing to advance the design. So kind of the key features of the scope here are certainly installation of that traffic signal system. And then as part of that, we're also installing a grade crossing active warning system. And those will be connected such that, if you have a train approaching, all your signals are going to go to red, that those systems have to work very closely. And so we kind of have our rail and traffic groups working together on that. Along with that, we'll have the reconstruction of the actual rail surface at the roadway with concrete panel rail sections. And then, as noted, some of those pedestrian and bike facility upgrades, kind of modifications to the lane arrangements. Looking at some of those in a little more detail, certainly the notable differences between existing and proposed are you get that left turn option. Once you introduce the signal, you can have a protected phase for a left turn there. You also get to introduce a pedestrian crossing on East Allen Street, which, we all know from being out there, it's nearly impossible to cross at any busy time right now. So that will be a, pedestrian activated crossing that's integrated with the signal. Another feature here is kind of a curb bump out, partially it's to, give space for some of the rail and traffic signal equipment, but it certainly reduces, the intent with both of these crosswalks is to reduce the crossing distances, to the extent that we can. Kind of these three structures here highlighted, these are intended to be combined rail and traffic signal structures. Given the visibility needed, certainly the hill coming down towards the intersection, you have to kind of get those on one structure to be able to see everything appropriately. Certainly have the bike lane coming through on the westbound direction, and it kind of, closing some of that gap in the existing bike lane that's out there. And then, part of what came out of some rail coordination was trying to get a perpendicular crossing for pedestrians at the railroad. The crosswalk today kind of just dumps you out onto the tracks there. So that, that's a feature as well. A little more on proposed conditions. Outside of what we were just showing within the intersection, it's primarily a mill and overlay and striping project that extends a little bit beyond there. But one thing we're able to do that was part of the broader corridor study is, given that we don't need that 2-lane merge condition from the left turn from East Spring Street going up towards Manseau Street, we're able to use that space to put in the left turn pocket there. So hopefully a little bit safer condition there for any left turning vehicles. And then on the lower part here, this is really just to show an example. This particular one is in Linden, but of kind of what a, combined rail traffic signal structure could look like. So certainly we're, early in the design. It may not look exactly like that, but just to kind of provide an idea. So now onto the sidewalk extension piece. Certainly we know today there's a gap in the sidewalk between Russell Street and East Allen Street. When we kind of kicked this project off, City of Winooski, John and Ryan came and said, hey, we'd really like to be able to close that sidewalk gap as part of this project. We know there's, certainly been public interest in that as well. Essentially, we took a look at some options, kind of assessed what it would mean for the overall project schedule, looking into utilities, drainage. This project has to move pretty quickly in order to be done before the bridge project. So that was really the main thing is, can this be done, without any, schedule right-of-way utility issues? Ultimately, the options that we looked at would be constructing that sidewalk within the existing roadway footprint. So we're kind of minimizing some of those overall impacts. And given that that section of roadway is fairly wide right now, and that there's some parking that, kind of seems to be underutilized on that side. So just showing one of the alternatives that we looked at here. This is the sidewalk on the south side version, but we looked at both, what happens if you put that sidewalk on the north and south side. A couple weeks ago, we presented these options to the Municipal Infrastructure Commission. At that, a motion was passed to recommend installing the sidewalk on the south side. And that sidewalk extension would be kind of the city-funded portion of the project. Certainly early in the design, but we're looking at a conceptual cost range of $300,000 to $500,000 for that section of sidewalk extension and kind of paving and restriping that area. Then just to give you kind of a general overview of kind of what we've done to date, as I noted, we've submitted conceptual plans. So we had a draft conceptual plan submission in November of 2024 and kind of got that out quickly, really to kick off the railroad coordination. Having that rail crossing adds, that whole extra layer of coordination. The railroad has, quite a bit of say in what happens with that specific piece of infrastructure. So we had a railroad diagnostic meeting on site in December of 24, and that, it's a fairly standard meeting on rail projects, but it's really focused on safety, kind of what happens at that interaction between the rail environment and the traveling public. What is needed for signal equipment, signage, striping, visibility aspects of it. So after that, we incorporated a few comments, submitted a final conceptual plans in February of this year. We've also been working through just some other coordination. We've had a subsurface investigation where we've gone out and taken a few borings to kind of understand, how deep is bedrock, what are the soils like as it relates to installing those large sign structures. And then we've also, I believe they're in progress right now, been doing utility test pits. And not that you can see it super clearly here, but this plan on the lower right is just to show there's a lot of stuff underground here. So we're really doing 15 or so test pits to kind of actually expose what's there underground, how we can avoid conflicts. This is certainly a project where, particularly with the schedule, we're really trying to mitigate any utility impacts as much as we can. And then certainly ongoing City of Winooski coordination as we, sit here and present today, and we'll continue to coordinate with the city going forward. Just overall project costs and funding, given the kind of rail components, all the traffic estimates, the actual physical roadway construction, there's quite a bit going on with this project. So we're looking at a conceptual cost estimate of $3 million to $3.5 million. That'll be refined as we work through the design. This project is fully federally funded, and then with the exception of that sidewalk extension piece that we discussed, that would be City of Winooski funded. Just overall getting into schedule and next steps, kind of moving on from this conceptual design phase into preliminary design, where we'll incorporate comments from the internal V-Trans review from conceptual plans. We'll advance our traffic analysis. I didn't talk a lot about this. We were looking at the plan view, but the location of Hood Street there is certainly a challenge and how close it ties into the intersection. So we are doing a bit of an alternatives assessment there to understand, is that stay stop control? Does it become part of the signal? Is there some changes to the pattern, the movement in and out of that? So we're looking at kind of a range of options there, really just to ensure that, we kind of have the safest setup there. So we'll look to submit preliminary plans in late 2025. And our final plans and contract plans will develop throughout 26, looking at a late 2026 advertise. And then the key piece in the schedule here is, expect this construction to occur during 2027. And that's really, it's imperative this project is completed before any lane reductions on the Burlington-Winooski Bridge, which, there may be minor aspects of construction or mobilization that are starting under that project in 2027, but we don't actually expect any of the, major activity on the bridge to happen until 2028. So that's kind of concludes what we have. I don't know if anyone has any specific questions.
Thank you very much for that. I know it's definitely something people have been asking for a long time, so it's exciting to see. The 3 million in federal funds, are those already secured funds that V-Trans has, or are those unsecured at this moment?
Those funds are not secured at the moment, but they will be. It's likely because of the priority that this intersection has, in combination with the bridge project, that we'll have to bump one other project down the list to make sure this one gets in on time. But it will be. We just gotta find the right project to bump.
Okay. Thank you for that. Any other questions?
That's actually my main one, so,
It's a big one as of late.
yeah.
I want to just emphasize the point that was made. So our last infrastructure commission meeting, we did have a presentation about the north side or the south side, and it was a unanimous vote by the commissioners to support the south side sidewalk, which was also what was preferred by city staff as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sure.
Yes.
Just so for the sidewalk, just for context, I think that's something we'll need to discuss during the next budget cycle. So not a done deal until we actually have funding for it.
Yep.
So I don't, I just want to make sure you all know it's coming, and we'll discuss, potential funding options for during the budget cycle.
Yeah. So
Also, I don't want to give Angela a heart attack. It's what 300,000? So yeah, before
no, I appreciate that.
yeah.
The approval part of this is not approving the 300,000.
Correct.
Yeah. Great. That said, it's on for discussion approval. Do you actually need any approval tonight, Ray, or?
I don't believe so tonight. It's really just an opportunity to answer questions and, yeah. See.
We do have folks in the public.
Yes, we do.
I have a question as well.
Oh, sure.
Do you guys have a timeline for the Hood Street scoping study that you mentioned? Is that what I heard?
Yeah, I wouldn't, it's not necessarily a separate scoping study, but it'll be part of our traffic analysis, and it will, what our final recommendation for that will be will come out in our preliminary plan submission.
Okay.
So it'll be, playing out in the, next 6 or 8 months here.
Okay, thanks.
Perfect. Well, seeing as it's just a discussion item, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well,
Public
public-
Oh, public comment. Is anybody here for public comment on this item? Certainly, if you could come up to the microphone, sir. Will you need these folks to answer your question?
Sorry.
Will you need these folks to answer? Sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was gonna have you pull up another chair if you needed them to still be there.
Yep, my name's Sean Blythe. I live on Russell Street, so I'm about a block and a half from the intersection. I'm just speaking in favor. I'm in favor both of the new crossing signal, which I think is long overdue, and somebody that navigates that intersection almost daily, multiple times. I can tell you it's long overdue. Obviously, when winter comes, it will be even greatly appreciated more. So we're looking forward to that. I want to speak specifically in favor of the sidewalks as well for a few different reasons. I also am in agreement that the south side feels like the best approach. I see that there's a bike lane on the north side of that as well, which I think is an excellent idea. It sort of sets the tone for the rest of East Spring as you travel uphill. So having that kind of set the tone there, and if there was even a way to continue that lane beyond at least up to the Barlow Main Street area, it would be excellent. Because as you guys are all aware, cars come zipping in pretty fast from East Allen, and then oftentimes blow through the Russell Street stop sign, both traveling up towards Main and then back down towards Allen. So again, taking that road, making it a little skinnier, I feel like it's going to calm traffic just inherently through that alone. I also know, you know, it's a pretty good sized road. It has to be one of the biggest roads in town that doesn't have 2 sidewalks, let alone 1. So to just add 1 feels like a big win there. So I'm in favor of it. I'm looking forward to the conversation when it comes up for the budget as well. So thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Appreciate you working.
Any public comment on Zoom?
We have another one.
Oh, there's another one.
Hi, my name's Eli Ogilvy. Design looks great, and so far I have no complaints. I'm just kind of curious about the next steps and kind of the timeline of what you guys need to approve in the future and what's needed. So, didn't know what was the next steps.
I mean, in terms of specific approvals, I guess, John, is it more budgetary and related to the sidewalk itself, or?
So I think our intent is, this is very concept design as shown. We would bring back sort of a final design plan for review, feedback, approval. And then, and then ultimately with the sidewalk, that would be sort of rolled into the budget discussion like we always do. So that's what I see as kind of up and coming is next steps would be, you know, we'll wrap up final design with HNTP and bring it back to you all for some more feedback.
And just to say out loud too, budget time for folks that don't know is we're usually reviewing budgets late December and through January. So that would be when this would be coming back to public for review and discussion.
To council.
Council, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is there any additional information that is worth sharing that hasn't been shared yet?
Can't think of anything. I mean, one item that will probably come to folks if they know this intersection well is Hood Street itself. We have to take a look at that streets coming in because it is the geometry for those streets are very tricky. So right now you can kind of see Hood Street. That's a really tough maneuver if you're coming out of Hood Street and trying to get to that signal. So there's going to be some alternatives that we'll be looking at there that I expect we will bring to the Infrastructure Commission for some additional feedback. But for this first draft, we wanted to just kind of show you the concept.
Great.
I'm so excited about that sidewalk.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody online.
Yeah, there's a couple people online. Paul, do you want to bring folks over?
Yeah, let's start with Mary Kane. Mary signed up for public comment. Mary is joining us by telephone. Hi, Mary. If you're there, feel free to give comment.
Mary, if you're speaking, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that.
No worries.
Good evening, council members, and thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Mary Kane. I've had the privilege of calling Winooski home. I graduated from UVM, and this city has had an integral part of my life ever since I came here in the 1970s. I just wanted to mention that as a resident of the 56-unit property that houses individuals with disabilities, I've come to appreciate how vital clear communication is to making everything move safely through the city. That's why it's so disheartening and concerning when on May 20th, 2025, a traffic incident highlighted some gaps that put residents and myself at risk. I wanted to share my experience with you today and ask for your support improving the safety utilizing the robocall system to notify the residents of Winooski Housing Authority and the well-being of Winooski residents, particularly those who are most vulnerable. In no way am I pointing a finger at the Winooski Housing Authority. who also were not informed of the traffic debacle so that they could utilize the robocall system to inform residents. On Tuesday, the 20th of May, at approximately 12:48 p.m., I encountered a frustrating and concerning situation while driving from East Spring Street to Main Street in Winooski. As a resident of the 56-unit property, where most residents are disabled and do not have access to computers, I rely on accurate and timely information to navigate the local traffic changes. However, in this instance, there was a significant lack of communication, which caused confusion and posed a risk to residents as well as myself. According to the Winooski Main Street Revitalization Weekly Post, the traffic flow in that area had been adjusted to as follows, I quote, "Main Street is reduced to the single lane for northbound traffic only. Southbound traffic is detoured to Teagan Street and Weaver Street. The northbound lane on Main Street will move east and west to allow for construction on both sides. This lane closure and detour route is in effect 24/7. Streets only allow right turns at their intersection with Main Street. Traffic on West Spring and East Spring can go straight or turn onto Main Street northbound." Despite the official guidance that the Winooski municipalities did not utilize the robocall system, which would typically be used to update residents on emerging situations like this. The failure to notify residents, particularly those with limited access to digital communications, left many of us unprepared for the changes. Additionally, there was no signage near the entrance or exit of the property abutting East Spring Street to alert residents of the altered traffic conditions. For residents with disabilities, including many in our building, those gaps in communication are more than just inconvenient, they are unsafe. There was no signage for the 56 residents to see at the entrance or the exit of the parking lot. There is no sidewalk across from the critical services to get to like the local pharmacy. I, for instance, changed my prescriptions to go to Essex. So you can't access medical appointments without having clear signage. Even walking through the area became a challenge. Emergency vehicles in particular could face difficulty in navigating through the altered traffic flow, adding to the risk. The situation was further exacerbated by an incident where I was stopped by a road flagger despite having a green light on East Spring Street and following the proper detour route as mandated by the municipality. The flagger stood in front of my vehicle, refusing to let me proceed, while other vehicles were allowed to continue normally. The flagger's actions not only contradicted the official traffic plan, but also caused unnecessary delays and confusion. There were additional vehicles behind me, which I saw would hinder a fast three-point turn in the middle of the street with cars and parked on either side. And there was an east to west lane open. So that really was confusing because it was right in front of me. The police officer who was present on the scene initially agreed with my position that I should be allowed to proceed this 3-car length from East Spring Street to north on Main Street, a right-hand turn, acknowledging that the flagger's behavior was unjustified and inconsistent with the Vermont traffic laws and the municipal guidelines. However, the officer ultimately acquiesced to the flagger's instructions, and I've never seen that before. And never. And I'm 67 years old. To make matters worse, the officer parked his vehicle on the right side of the intersection of Main Street and East Street, further impeding access for the residents of the area and the emergency vehicles. This compounded the already unsafe, unclear situation. So I'm deeply concerned about the lack of communication and the failure to implement proper signage and the risk posed to residents, especially those with disabilities, who rely on clear and accessible information to navigate the area safely. I respectfully request that the municipalities take immediate action to ensure that the future changes into traffic patterns are properly communicated through the accessible channels, such as the robocall system, and that appropriate signage be placed in high traffic areas, particularly near the residential entrance and exit. And I just wanted to end with one quote from a very esteemed Winooski resident. The path to greatness is paved with perseverance and unwavering dedication, according to the beloved Ethan Allen. And I want to thank you for your attention to this serious matter, and I look forward to seeing your response. Thank you so much.
Mary, thank you very much for your comments, and I'm sorry about those incidents. It sounds like it was extraordinarily frustrating, to say the least. I saw our interim city manager taking some notes, and I know that there's some staff on this call who all handle the different issues that you brought up. I don't know if staff will have an answer for you right away, but I see Ray.
Yeah, I think, Mary, I believe you and Paul communicated via email earlier today, and I can connect with our team here and discuss, the pieces you shared today. I really appreciate the feedback, and certainly I think,
thank you.
Yeah, connecting with the robocall is an interesting concept that we can certainly look at with Housing Authority, and I think there's potentially some solutions here. So we'll be back in touch via email.
Thank you so much. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you.
You too.
Paul, I see another hand on Zoom. Diane, you're all set.
Hi, thanks for letting me speak again. I just had a couple questions about this. One, I just wanted to support the sidewalk between Russell and Hood Street. I think that, like Mary said, the building for seniors very close by and just allowing folks to easier navigate that area would be very welcome. So just wanted to put in a plug for that. In the interim, I live on Hood Street between East Spring and High. I'm wondering about the crosswalk across East Spring right now, if there can be any improvements made to just increase visibility of that crossing. That's the way that we walk to get downtown Winooski, and it's just not the most visible to people taking that right or people who are just focused on that tricky left off of East Spring. So I didn't know if there were any plans to try to improve that crosswalk in the interim. And then lastly, I was just interested, I know that it's coming, but if there's more details about the potential Hood Street alternatives. I know at one point, I think early in the planning, there was consideration to making that a dead end. And then I just heard, maybe ensuring that it's added into the signal work. So I just was curious if you could at this point provide any more specifics on the alternatives, or if that just has to wait until you do more planning around that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Diane. So first question on the crosswalk. So we actually have some quotes coming in to just refresh the line striping on East Allen Street, which would include that crosswalk. We try to cycle our gateway corridors every couple of years and just refresh lines. So we do have that on for repainting this season. So you should see an update there. And then two, we honestly have not really gotten into any of the Hood Street crossing like alternatives yet. So definitely more to come on that one. So I'm sure we'll be digging into that this season. And I think I expect, as mentioned, we'll be sharing that probably first publicly with the Infrastructure Commission on one of their public meetings. So definitely keep an eye on those agendas. But yeah, we haven't really discussed that intersection yet, or that tie-in yet.
Okay, thank you. Thanks so much.
Any other comment on Zoom or in the room?
I just want to note that there were some public comments submitted by email ahead of time as well. So just Stating that for the record.
You want to read it?
I can. Would you like me to?
Yes.
I think we all got it, so.
But for the record, not everybody has
I
got it.
mean,
Maybe you can summarize it.
Let's read 'em off. Let's go.
Kristen Lawson from River Street wrote in this afternoon at 1:34 p.m. indicating that they support completing the sidewalk on East Spring Street between Russell and East Allen, noting that the gap forces pedestrians, including children, seniors, individuals with mobility challenges, and those without access to a car to walk in the roadway currently highly dangerous and hazardous for everyone. Traffic, pedestrians alike, and that including that in this project would create safe, continuous route through the vibrant residential neighborhood as well, and helps with linking the corridors between Main Street and East Allen. So that's just a summary of her comment, and there was one other one, but it also was in support of adding the sidewalks. And reiterated a number of the comments that we've already had today, so I don't have that. I think it was from Eric Leo that was submitted last week.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing those public comments that were sent to us via email. Now I think we will move on to our next item. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you all.
John, you can stay up here. Yeah.
So our next item will be strategic vision area goal update, municipal infrastructure. John, take it away.
Great. So this is our third update. We have a small list, but they're very expensive things. So big projects. So out of the three must-dos, all three major capital projects that are either underway or in design. So I'll just give some highlights and then see if you have any questions. So the first one is the Abenaki Garage, Winooski Falls Way development. That's for folks that aren't aware, city-owned parking garage. There'll be 3 levels, and then on either side and up above will be a hotel on the south side, housing on the north side. So if you drive by, you can definitely see the progress that's happening down there. They're installing steel. I think they've topped out at this point on the hotel, so you can kind of get a good sense of what that the size that building's going to be. There's not a lot of work on our side right now. We're mainly coordinating with the team on the slab parking decks, which are pretty on the engineering side, a pretty interesting mixed design that we worked pretty closely with the design team on, primarily make sure that long-term we're reducing as much maintenance in the future as possible. So we reviewed a mock-up at SD Ireland's plant a couple months ago. They're pretty excited about the slab mix. They said they're going to use it on all their projects moving forward, just because it has some interesting admixtures that will, reduce the amount of hopefully corrosion that may trickle down through the bottom of the slab, and so we're pretty excited about that. So I think they're finishing up some of those pours next week or so. Other than that, we are working with the project team on the new Casa Van entrance, which will be a boardwalk structure versus the kind of dirt road that's there currently. So that'll be a major improvement. We're working with Velco, who has some infrastructure out on the islands there. We need to make sure they can maintain access to get equipment out there. GMP. Once we have some designs, we'll actually be working with parks folks to get some additional feedback, but that's kind of the one ongoing design facet that's happening right now. And then moving over to Main Street, trying to capture stuff that we're not pushing out every week in the updates, but overall the projects, I think cost-wise we're about 42% the way through based on our billings, so we're getting halfway out of that 22 million plus or minus contract. Water sewer is substantially complete. The construction crew is primarily focused on stormwater work up the corridor and telecom conduit work, coordinating with GMP and all the telecoms. So if you've seen any of the photos that Paul's posted, it's a spaghetti of conduits. So it's, it's interesting work, and that will continue south, northward throughout the project zone. And then probably the more exciting piece, once those final underground pieces start going through, then you'll start seeing the road reconstruction work kind of march up the corridor as well. So you can kind of see that on the south end right now, south of Spring Street, with the paver work that's been going in. So that will continue as well. Just some updates for meetings that are coming up. So tomorrow we're having a downtown Winooski. We're hosting a meeting for downtown Winooski businesses. Just provide feedback. That'll be 9:30 at City Hall tomorrow. And then we're also going to have a follow-up open house for the public on June 17th at 6 p.m. here at City Hall. So we've done one previously for the businesses, an open house just to gather any feedback. The June 17th one will be primarily for the public and residents to provide any feedback so far.
That's great.
And then Mike's still here, but he's the PM on the DDI project. So they've you've probably seen they have awarded that construction project. Talking to him just now, it sounds like they've executed contracts with SD Ireland. We have some coordination with them. They actually have some pieces of their project in our Main Street corridor. So the traffic signal at Tigan Street is technically part of the DDI project. So timing wise, it's actually syncing up pretty well because they're going to front load that work into the Main Street project so that, we can coordinate our contractor with their contractor. So there'll be, I'm sure, a lot of public information coming out on that project.
John, do you know, I know when we originally heard about the DDI project, they thought it would finish up before the bridge project, but with this delay, do you know if that's still maybe possible?
I believe I'll get back to you. I think it's finishing up. I haven't looked at what their schedule is looking like. But yes, it definitely should be done before the bridge project in 2027. But I'm sure I think they're working on preliminary schedules, submittals, that sort of thing. So we'll definitely have more information that we can share from V-Trans on that.
Great, thank you.
And then the bridge project, it's been, it's too bad. So you probably, I should have mentioned you, Steve is also working on the bridge project. So a lot of familiar faces. Not a lot of things to report out on at this point. The project team's primarily working on the RFP process that will be soliciting the design build contractor. So there's a lot of environmental permitting things happening. But I'm trying to think, I don't know, the PIP, I think there might be some public meetings maybe coming up.
So I'm on the advisory committee. I haven't seen anything noticed to the advisory committee recently.
Yeah, so
I think the last thing I heard about was the event that they held at the school district here in Winooski, and I think they're doing something similar in Burlington because ours was so cool.
Yeah.
But other than that, I don't know about additional public hearings.
Yeah. So not a lot to report out on that one right now. We still do have to work through a condemnation hearing that'll be sometime in late June. I think we're trying to schedule for a temporary easement, but not much on that one. And then the other two items are mostly, budget related and planning related, but that's it on the routes.
Awesome, thank you, John. Council, any questions or comments? No? Any questions from members of the public in the room? Members of the public on Zoom, do you have any questions? All right, not seeing any questions. Thank you, John.
Thanks.
All right, next up for discussion approval is the cap on the number of non-owner occupied short-term rental licenses that may be issued by the city. Yeah, that was helpful. Thank you, Jasmine.
Hey, everyone. Alrighty, so as promised at the last meeting, I'm here to talk about the short-term rental cap for non-owner occupied short-term rentals. So I will spare you going through all this data because it's exactly the same as what I went over last month. But looking at some new data that I've added, so I took a look at Airbnb listings last, well, no, that was when I wrote this a couple weeks ago now, in May, and there seemed to be about 23 to 37 listings posted in Winooski. I did switch the days, switch the time of year, switch the amount of nights, because a lot of different Airbnbs have different rules. Some people only do it if it's more than 2 nights. Some people just do 1 night. Some people only do it seasonally. So I tried to switch it around quite a bit to get an understanding of what is out there. The number is definitely lower than it was last year. I think part of this as well is that unfortunately we've lost a valuable tool that I had been using previously called AirDNA, which I think I mentioned last time has now switched to more of like a corporate model, unsurprisingly. So I kind of have to just use Airbnb and just kind of stock on Airbnb. That's the best data we have. So this number is kind of loosely in alignment with the amount of licenses we have. It's certainly better to see that number be lower than like double what number of licenses we have. But again, it's just a snapshot. Short-term rentals are fairly fluid, with people only renting some parts of the year. And so staff, i.e. me, have audited all of these listings about 2 times in the past year. Going through them all, I link the actual Airbnb links to their place in our registry database. Even though since we don't have that many, I start to recognize them now, which is funny. And through those 2 efforts, it was myself, Angela, who else, and Chris, because Angela can look at a picture and be like, I know where that is. And we found about 10 that were not licensed. A few of those decided not to rent anymore. I do know that there are at least 3 more non-owner occupied short-term rentals that are actively working with code, but have not yet applied for licenses. That has been kind of a multi-departmental coordination. So the number is 44 for non-owner occupied, but is effectively 47 if we include those 3 that I am aware of. I will note that any property that we know has done any short-term renting in this fiscal year will have to pay the license, even if they haven't applied or don't apply till next year. We even have we had someone apply for 2 last week. It's bad timing for them financially, but they do have to pay for this year. And again, when the new fiscal year happens, because we know that they were short-term renting during this fiscal year. So I will note, from my opinion, short-term rental growth does not seem to be happening at the same pace as it did from 2023 to 24, which some of you may remember almost doubled in the few years before 2023. There are probably a lot of factors playing into this. I think one of them was the timing of Burlington's short-term rental regulations, also economic factors, possibly. So it's interesting to see. I have not seen that number jump really since we started this program a year ago. I do anticipate that the hotel will change the market a little bit, since obviously that is a shared market between hotels and Airbnbs. It's not exclusively one market, because some people will only do hotels, some people will only do Airbnbs, but obviously there's a lot of overlap with that. I would only imagine that would reduce the amount of short-term rentals in the city, since there's just more competition. We're a very small market, even like countywide. So that will be certainly interesting to see. Like I've mentioned many times also, short-term rentals, for the most part, a lot of them are fairly fluid and open to the idea of long-term renting if it becomes more financially feasible, or for example, if the hotel brings enough competition that they don't feel like they're making enough profit anymore. So just a little bit more data. Of these 44 licenses for non-owner occupied properties, only 16% have Winooski owners, but that number is actually probably more like 7%, because one owner used an LLC in Winooski, but I don't think that that is an accurate address. So very low percentage actually living in Winooski. Unsurprisingly, most are living in Burlington, about 43%, and only one out-of-state owner, which is lower than I thought, actually. 26 of the total owners there are 26 owners that own those 44 non-owner occupied units. So 10 of those only own one property. And then there are 16 owners that have multiple units, and those range between 2 and 5. Only one person has 5. I think 2 to 3 people have 4, maybe a few people with 3, and quite a few with 2. There's a lot of people that have bought duplexes and rent both of them. So just more data to keep in mind. So looking at actual options for setting a cap on the non-owner occupied short-term rental licenses, I've laid out a few of the options here in alignment with what we had discussed a year ago when designing this policy and putting it in ordinance. So the first option would be to cap it at 44, which is the exact number of current licenses that we have. The second option would be to cap the non-owner occupied licenses at 47, which is the current number of licenses plus the 3 additional anticipated licenses that I mentioned earlier. Option C would be to set the cap at 50, which is the current number of licenses, those additional 3, and then a small buffer of 3. And then option D would be to cap the number at some number above 50. You could choose any number. And that would account for all of the above plus allowing for additional growth, obviously. So both city staff and the Housing Commission are in alignment with the recommendation, which is option C, so a 50 license cap. This is not only because it's a nice round number, but it's also because it allows the city a small buffer before reaching this limit. The intention behind this is to proactively manage growth while maintaining flexibility in the early phases of this program. So staff continue to strongly support the idea of a cap as a necessary step to curb the expansion of short-term rentals. But at the same time, we anticipate that reaching the cap could introduce new operational challenges, particularly for the clerk's office, as staff may face more frequent and potentially contentious interactions with applicants once licenses are no longer available. To date, the short-term rental program has been largely successful in maintaining a collaborative education-first approach in the same lens as the public building registry program. This has allowed us to build positive relationships with property owners and community members, and has helped avoid enforcement-driven or punitive dynamics. These interactions can be especially difficult when they involve homeowners who are already operating short-term rental businesses. It is a lot easier to inform a new applicant that no licenses are available than to ask an existing operator to stop their businesses because the cap has been reached. Given that staff suspect some short-term rental properties may still be unaccounted for, I don't imagine we are at 100% compliance. That would be great, but I'm sure there are some floating around there still. We have proposed a modest buffer of 3 additional licenses that would help potentially reduce conflict and ensure smoother enforcement. This concern is underscored by ongoing legal developments. In Burlington, a lawsuit was brought by property owners who lost the ability to operate short-term rentals under new regulations. While the city of Burlington did prevail in the initial case, it is still under appeal. So there is not legal clarity necessarily at this point in that area. And so I do feel like a lower cap could be considered once we have a little bit more legal precedence in that area, at least locally, because it's a little all over the place nationally, as the law tends to be. So the staff and the Housing Commission also recommend including an annual review of the license cap. This would allow for thoughtful adjustments based on actual demand. If the total number of active licenses remains well below 50, or if the local housing landscape changes, for example, when the hotel opens, then the city could retain the option to reduce the cap accordingly. Obviously, if we're losing licenses through attrition, then maybe there's no reason to have it at 50. If we're losing 5 a year or something like that, then it could be reduced without, potentially avoiding more some more of these contentious interactions that would mostly be on Jenny and her team and me a little bit. But yeah, it'll change the dynamic certainly, which was always the intention. But yeah, so happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for all of that. I think that we had originally, when we first discussed this, we talked about not wanting to stop people who are already having an existing Airbnb business from doing it, recognizing the difficulty that would bring on staff. So thank you for giving us numbers that show folks who are in the process and a little buffer. Charlie, you oversee the commission, so I don't know if you had anything that you wanted to add before we start our discussion.
Not in particular. I think it's promising that we haven't seen the same increase as we have in the past. I don't really know what exactly the factors are that are really driving that, but
Yeah, we can really, I think with the community so small, we can really only bear so much, like we're not a tourist destination. I think we benefit from proximity to Burlington, and maybe we will be a tourist destination someday. But I think we probably hit a peak that there can really only be so many people wanting to come and spend a certain amount of money to stay in Winooski. I think that's probably a big part of it. But because I think we were at like 1.5% of our housing stock, so it makes sense that it wouldn't go any higher unless we were like open to ski resort.
Gosh. Any questions for Jasmine before we begin?
No, I think the timing, just some comments. I think the timing of it is really wise, given the timing of the hotel. I know it's still a little ways off before they open, but I think starting now is feels like a really good idea. There might be some additional pressure that's put on our short-term housing stock. The Vermont Construction Academy opened, had its grand opening this past month, and hopefully with their overwhelming success, we'll see multi-day programming there. Hopefully they can also utilize the hotel, but in the interim there might be some additional pressure. I know that they're still getting their programming up to speed and building that out, so probably not anything imminent, but some additional short-term demand might be coming as a result. But with the hotel right around the corner, hopefully that it all kind of merges over to that space. But I'm in favor of your recommendation to cap it at 50. I don't have concerns with that. It feels like it's well reasoned. So.
Thank you, Bren. I'm also in favor of option C at 50.
I would definitely not want to go above 50s. And I am glad with, and I think that's the next item, kind of letting this be an annual thing because things will be changing with Main Street, with the hotel, and that'll give us kind of the flexibility to best respond to whatever changes. It does concern me a little bit that there might still be some folks that are out there not in compliance, and that would be kind of my one hesitation to do the full 50, because there's part of me that's like, if they're not in compliance at this point, maybe they're not doing the business as they should. But I can also understand this is the first time we're setting this, and that this can be kind of, we're continuing to collect data on what this looks like.
Yeah, I would say from the people that I've found through like auditing Airbnb, I'm sure a few of them were like vaguely aware of the program and chose to maybe not remember it. But I think there are a few people that genuinely like don't read all of the public building registry mailers, like they don't look at the newsletter, they don't check social media, and maybe genuinely didn't see it because we really only have so much. Yeah, I know a few of the people we sent like letters to directly once we identified the property, and they were like immediately responded and applied. So I'm sure it's a mix of both.
Yeah, yeah.
We don't really have like a universally utilized, like, we hope that people read the public building registry mailer. They should, because they own public buildings.
Yeah.
But the reality is some people don't, so.
Yeah, I think part of my concern too is that the folks that would be most out of the loop are the folks that are not living in this state, and thus are not really a part of our community and our boarding stock that could be going to our residents. So that's again, just kind of voicing that concern. I'm comfortable with moving forward with 50, but those are just kind of the thoughts that came up as I was reviewing the data.
Charlie?
It's to your point, Aura, it sounds like if the folks that aren't complying wouldn't be considered under the cap if they're not like on the list. So I don't really see how the 2 points draw together. But I think like as of right now, I think 50 is adequate. I don't necessarily know that capping it lower has an advantage at this stage. And if 50 prevents staff from having to have a really uncomfortable, let's make those conversations unnecessary. That just tracks in my mind.
Yeah, and that goes along with the next item. It may and very well could happen, but Jenny also has like a fully new staff, and this is going to be their first year doing the short-term rental licenses as well. So it would be nice if it doesn't hit like immediately as we start issuing the licenses. So.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I don't want to make y'all's.
I was gonna make a motion.
I'm gonna see if the public has anything they
Alright.
need to add.
Good on you.
Any comments from folks in the room? Yeah, please come up. And if you can just state your name again.
Yeah, my name's Eli Ogilvy. I have no skin in the game, and I don't really care for it, but I'm curious why a cap is preferred over increasing fees for registration. If you want to incentivize not doing something, why put a cap instead of just making it more expensive to do?
Yeah, I think we've done both in a way because, well, when we wrote, or when you guys chose the $1,400, so there is a $1,400 license fee annually for non-owner occupied. It was the highest. I think South Burlington ended up doing $1,500 like the next day or something. So we did do a fairly high fee, but I think part of it is just wanting to cap the total number because some of the properties make enough money that, we tried to do a fee that was going to be suitable for everyone, but we don't really have the administrative capacity to do fees that are connected to people's profit off of their short-term rentals, which would be ideal, is that you have like a tax on the revenue from the short-term rental. Unfortunately, we don't have the mechanism to do that in Winooski. But so someone who has really small studio and is making like $100 a night versus someone that has a 6-bedroom single family home and is charging $600 a night don't have to pay the same fee, because unfortunately that's, it's not ideal, but that is the reality that we're working with, and we don't collect our own taxes. So we are not able to do that. So we had to do 1,400 just kind of straight across the board. And I think the cap is just our way of allowing people who are existing to continue operating, but preventing future growth. Because at the time when this was written, the growth was very rapid. It almost doubled within like 4 years. That has not happened in the past year. But long story short, I think even if the license fee is higher, I'm sure people will continue to do it. So it just maybe feels like a stronger policy option to actually cap it.
And there was also the discussion over the fee that we wanted to be something that would give the city, we'd be able to gain some money from it, but it also wouldn't deter people from wanting to pay it. So we went back and forth on that for a while before we landed at that number. I actually, we went over what you had actually recommended.
Yeah.
So
I think it doubled or something. So, but the cap does effectively cap the amount of revenue that the housing trust fund can earn. So it's an interesting kind of double-edged sword of which is better. But I think license fees have to be reasonable in nature, legally, I think. So I think 1,400 was probably pushing it, so.
Because the argument for that was that people would just start to skirt sooner or later, right? If we brought the fee up too high.
Yeah.
And then kind of, it discouraged people from complying at one point. So we
Yeah,
kind of tried to
potentially.
like find some middle ground there that would make people that were already gaining revenue from short-term rentals, not encouraging them to comply with what we were asking. That was a new expectation of them after they were already in business. The fee wasn't, I don't think, ever intended as a deterrent for folks that were interested, so much as a way of creating some sort of legitimacy on the city's side for working with those people and having kind of a pulse on short-term rental owners. I'll let you take it from there, Jasmine. But that
Yeah.
that's my like recap of the conversation we had when we determined what that fee would be.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I don't think it is like a full obstacle for people, but I do think it disincentivizes short-term, especially we have some property owners that have a mix of long-term rentals and short-term rentals in some like very large buildings. I think those are potentially sometimes the most concerning because that could like signify that someone is, entering into the short-term rental game and like going to slowly transition all of that building into short-term rentals. But I think for some of those, having to pay $1,400 annually for each of those units, it just might push someone towards just saying, okay, actually, I think it's easier to just do a year lease with someone rather than continue to do this because it wipes out some of my profit margin.
And comparatively, the long-term fee, the annual fee for long-term rentals.
Yeah, they
is-
have to pay that for short-term too, because it's just
No,
inspection
the
fee.
the comparison, 1,400 versus.
Yeah.
What are we at now? 115?
Oh, yeah. Well, they have to pay 1,400 plus 115, so they have to.
But if they're just doing long-term, they just pay
Yes,
a
Correct.
smaller
It's
amount.
$115
Yes.
just for long
Yeah.
term. So
Yeah.
making sure that differential was
Mhm.
also significant enough to
Yeah.
encourage the longer term rentals.
Two smaller questions, if you don't mind me asking. How often would the cap be revisited? Is it once a year? Is that kind of what it sounds like?
Is your request
The
annually?
legal language advised is time to time.
Okay.
But we can operationally it'll be by resolution, so, because we don't have the cap to put into the ordinance, / I don't prefer putting like a hard number in the ordinance. It's annoying to have to open it up every year. Probably annually. I think I'll probably just put it on the Housing Commission's work plan to revisit annually and provide recommendations, if it makes sense.
And is there, because you mentioned that if you made the fee too high, you're worried about folks not complying with the registration. Is there a fear that same thing would happen with a cap, where if you hit that cap, you weren't issuing out any more registration, that they would just have the unit for
Yeah,
short term
that's
regardless? Is that-
certainly a possibility, yes.
Okay.
I mean, that's happening in Burlington. I think our hope was that by doing a little bit more of like a cooperative approach by working with existing owners and capping new growth rather than like doing a full ban, for example, that we were able to work with people on that. People can always violate ordinances, of course, but I mean, we do have written into ordinance that we have protocol for enforcement. So if we are aware of someone operating illegally, then we do have financial and legal action that we can take.
All right, thank you. Those are my questions.
Yeah.
Great
Thank
questions.
you.
Thanks for
Thank you.
asking.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions on Zoom? All right, no questions on Zoom.
That actually did remind me of one question, though. Are we, like any of our fees, that's something that we can in the future look at, like thinking about if like the cost of living increases and stuff like that. that
Yeah,
we'd
that's
be able to adjust
something
that.
I was thinking about as well, but I don't have time to do this for
Yeah, and-
this. So yeah, I was thinking about potentially adding some sort of like inflation adjustment annually, but I
'Cause
know
that fee
not
is
all.
currently in ordinance.
Yeah, it's
set.
28.
Yeah, so
So-
I think we'd have to revisit that.
The
And
full
when we do, if we want to do through a ordinance update.
Yeah, because you don't know, I think I was trying to be in alignment with the inspection fee, since this is like same chapter as that. And that does not change, which could be something to be considered, but that is a larger lift probably,
Yeah.
to encourage people that is warranted. So I think I decided, I decided not to do that because I was trying to keep it in alignment with the inspection fee. And since that's not like inflation adjusted, I didn't want to have just this one be. We could, but.
But yeah, I was thinking like we often review those from like chicken licensure to beehive licensure.
But it's not, and Angela's on the call, so she can speak to how frequently that comes to us. I don't know that we review fees annually.
Yeah.
It's every
That's
few
true.
years.
Yeah, there's a few fees. Oh, go ahead, Angela.
So it generally comes up about once a year. We actually have some proposed amendments that we're working through right now. So it is possible that this is going to come back on an annual basis. There's usually something that needs cleanup or update.
Okay.
Great. Anything else? All right, I still don't see anything on Zoom. So it seems like we're in alignment over option C. So I will seek approval for the staff and housing commission recommended option C, the cap to cap the non-owner occupied STR licenses at 50, with also to re-look at that number. Do you want me to say time to time? Would you, or do we think annually is where we want to land?
Well, I think that'll come up in the next.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
item.
maybe time.
So just now, we need the option,
Option,
and then
okay.
the next agenda
Yeah.
item will go through the specifics.
So that said, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by
Second.
Charlie, second by Bryn.
Yes.
All those in favor,
Aye.
please say aye.
Aye.
All those, no, that was everyone. All right. Item approved. We will move on to item D, discussion approval. The amendment to the Municipal Code, Chapter 17, the Public Building Registry to address non-owner occupied short-term rental cap. Jasmine.
Yes, so we realized that the chapter 17 had language that was going to be outdated soon. So this item is to amend that language. So as I mentioned, the current language says prior to June 30, 2025. So obviously that needs to be changed. We, as I also mentioned before, prefer to have this be set by resolution rather than have the actual number 50 be in the ordinance, just because it's a little bit less burdensome. So this is similar to how the Thrive fees are written in chapter 28. Just as by resolution. So the new language was proposed by the attorneys. And it does talk about the actual cap being set by resolution. It does talk about how the licenses will be granted on a first come, first served basis, which is the current protocol in the clerk's office. Right now, the clerks will only hold a short-term rental license if it's complete. So this would be first come, first served basis based on the date it's submitted for a complete application. If applications exceed the then current cap on licenses, then the clerk's office will maintain a wait list of prospective applicants for initial licenses that exceed that cap. An applicant will have 30 days from the date of submission of their application to satisfy all conditions set forth in Chapter 17. So that includes all code-related inspections and having an active certificate of fitness, and then being current on all kind of financials related to that property, which shockingly most people don't have both of those. So we did 30 days because we wanted to give people a little bit of time if it's something simple, like they didn't realize that they hadn't paid a bill or something like that, or just a small code thing. We wanted to give them time, but we didn't want to do more than 30 days because some of these code related issues can really drag on for a long time. Like I have people that applied the first day and I'm still working with them on some of these code issues. And so we didn't necessarily want to reward owners that are, generally that is going to be like a negligent property situation. So we didn't want to reward people for an extended period of time, and felt like 30 days was appropriate. After that, we got to go to the next person in line and give them the opportunity if they're ready. So that is all in there. Yes, so, and this is only for new licenses, so not for existing. We wanted to make sure that people who are doing renewals are prioritized in that cap number. If that wasn't the case, it would be, quite frankly, a free-for-all on the first of the month. And that could get very ugly if people who have been doing it for 5 years suddenly didn't get there fast enough. And, you know, so I wanted to spare Jenny's team from that. So yes, that is the recommended language. So the action to be taken would be to introduce the amendment and then to set the public hearing date for the next council meeting.
Does council have any questions or comments?
No.
Any questions or comments from the public? All right, in that case, I will seek a motion to approve the language as presented by city staff and to set a public hearing for our next city council meeting, which is June 16th.
So moved.
Motion by Aurora,
Second.
second by Bryn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passed. Thank you. All right.
Thank you, Jasmine.
For these executive sessions, Ray, do we want to move into one and talk about both items and then come out, or do we want to move into one, come out, and then move into the other?
I think we can take them both together.
Okay.
But I think we should take a motion to find that we need to go into executive session for each independently.
Yep.
And then we can do, I sent you the list of invitees for both.
All right, bear with me, folks. So I will be seeking a motion for 2 executive sessions pursuant to state statute VSA 31C. The discussion of real estate purchase or lease options related to the Armory lot in public would put the city at a disadvantage and so should be discussed in executive session. And seeking a motion to find that pursuant to state statute VSA 313, that discussion of contracts in public would put the city at a disadvantage and so should be discussed in executive session. Do I have a motion for that?
Second.
All right, motion by Bryn, second by Charlie. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And I will also seek a motion to enter into executive session, inviting for our first item, Acting City Manager Ray Coffey, Housing Initiative Director Jasmine Hurley, Finance Director Angela Alderai, Public Works Director John Rauscher, Miranda Lascaze from CHT, Michael Monty from CHT, and Kathy Zhao from PFC City Legal Counsel. Do I have a motion for that?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Bryn, second by Charlie. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And then for our second part of the executive session, a motion to enter into executive session inviting Public Works Director John Rauscher, Finance Director Angela Adirai, Human Resources Director Jesse Acri, and Acting City Manager Ray Coffey. Can I get a motion for that?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Charlie, second by Bryn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Perfect. We will now move into our executive session to discuss these topics. No other business will be discussed during this time. We will return to the main meeting to take any actions.
And I think I would just say we would return only to adjourn. There's no planned action coming
Okay.
out of either of
Perfect.
these items tonight, so I think we can.
So these items are not up for an approval that we'll be making tonight, so we will just be returning to adjourn our public meeting. Thank you.
Should I grab that? Possibly.
We're gonna go into the back so that Steve can get burned down. So we'll go to Angel's office.